Clearly I don't know what I'm doing. Luckily nobody can see. Damn person. Here. And alright. Final answer. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Final answer. You're right. Who gives a shit? Didn't even get the sword. Still hot. It's pretty close though. My theory is for, exfoliating. Well, it's not a theory for exfoliating purposes, but it needs to be good and hot. It helps with the exfoliation of toxic substances that are built up in the skin because the immune system pushes them away from the core. The toxic metals, that is. I mean, this seems like it's something I've heard before. I've heard that that's how the immune system functions, I should say. And so I'm just using simple logic based on that. We're breathing metal. It bypasses the blood-brain barrier a bit. It bypasses the BBB. I wonder if Porky Pig could say BBB or blood-brain barrier, which would be more difficult for him. He's always saying BBB though, I guess. So there we go. Anyway, so yeah, it bypasses it, right, and goes right into the cells, and we get the aluminum in a cell, and a cell has a zeta potential, which gives it its magnetic field. And that magnetic field gives it its shape and age, which determines its function. I mean, it's part of existing in a material world. You have to have some sort of something that gives the constituent minerals and elements that are in your body a shape and makes them keep that shape. And that's called magnetic fields. It's magnetic fields, and they're called zeta potential in the cell. That's a measure of its magnetic strength. And I've seen videos where other magnetic fields, not a cell, but they're on coils, and you put pieces of aluminum into the magnetic field, even though they're non-magnetic. You put them into the magnetic field that's generated around an electromagnet, and it distorts the field into weird shapes. It messes it up, and it's no longer symmetrical. And I have to think that does the same thing to the cell on a magnetic, the zeta potential magnetic field of a cell. And that's kind of why the nanoscale size is the big difference between normal toxic buildup of aluminum, fluoride, bauxite, whatever. Anything from the bauxite, the box, the cube, right? There's a strange connection there too with cube, sixes, and that whole iron. But anyway, the metals, aluminum, the non-ferrous metals, non-magnetics, they distort magnetic fields. Copper does too, but copper is different than aluminum. Anyway, copper has the excess negative free ions that can be released, and that's why it's reactive with acids quite easily, and even mild things. Copper's awesome. Aluminum, even though it has some similar properties as copper, aluminum is horrible. That's why aluminum's everywhere, and copper is getting hard to get your hands on. You used to be able to go buy sheets of it, rolls of it at the store, at the hardware store. They don't even carry it at Home Depot or Lowe's. They have tin galvanized, made to look like copper, and also some sort of aluminum sheets that are copper tinted, copper glazed or some shit. It's lame. Can't get real copper. It's Anyway, I digress. What the hell was I saying? Oh, electric fields, magnetic fields. I mean, it's not it's not hard to understand. You picture it real easy in your mind. You got your magnetic field. It's going, and then well, it's not really doing that, but if you could hear it, that's what it would be doing. And then it's now nice and donut-shaped toroid. And then you put one little piece of aluminum in there, and the magnetic field, right where the aluminum is, the lines go like this, duck in and around, because the aluminum tries to change the magnetic field energy into electricity, and therefore it becomes electrified. But there's nowhere for the electricity to go because it's just one single piece that's not connected to any place. It's positive and negative become different areas in the material itself, in the aluminum piece. One end becomes positive, one becomes negative because the magnetic field is induced into the aluminum, but there's nowhere for it to go. It's basically shorts itself out, in a sense. It's not going to catch fire necessarily. If you follow what I'm saying, though, then it becomes charged and it gets its own slight magnetic field because of its electric charge that it gains when it becomes immersed in the magnetic field of the cell or the coil. The aluminum, you put it in the magnetic field, it becomes electrified, but nowhere for the power to go. So that, I guess you'd say it, like it reflects back and causes the magnetic field to distort right there. And so you keep adding more and more pieces of aluminum into the magnetic field area, and you get less and less of a coherent magnetic field. The magnetic field begins to seriously deform, and once it's really deformed, it no longer resembles the original magnetic field because the pieces of aluminum are altering it. Now picture that, from being a coil, electromagnet coil, to being a cell that has a magnetic field and nanoparticles in the cell, because they're smaller than the cell. They really are. They're smaller than the cell by a lot. It's like throwing dust in a boxcar. So you start filling the boxcar with dust, and pretty soon the boxcar's full of dust, right? Except the boxcar's the cell, and the magnetic field is the shape of it, and it's getting ruined. It's getting ruined. And then the cell does not reproduce correctly, and then it's malformed, and we call that what? We call it, yes we can, sir. What can we call that? Yes we can, sir. We call it that. Or a zillion other manifestations of the toxic buildup in the body. And it's white. The metals are white. Calcification happens through crystallization, like in the glands. Well, how is white hair or ashy white skin or silver, either way, silver, white, eventually pure white. It depends on the metal mix, exactly what flavor of white or silver things become. But there's also arthritis, known for a long time. Aluminum gets in the joints and it clogs up the vasculature that allows oxygen to get into the joints, and they become oxygen deprived and become inflamed, and that's arthritis. Aluminum. Hello. Alzheimer's on the rise big time. Oh, if we could only figure out what's causing this Alzheimer's epidemic. Oh my goodness, what could it possibly be? Autism. Oh yeah, let's inject babies with immunizations the moment they're born and make sure they get injected regularly their entire lives. That's how we're helping, because see, God makes shit and doesn't know what he's doing. But luckily our smart doctors and pharmacists have developed, vaccines to correct the mistakes of nature. That makes a lot of sense. I feel like Terrence McKenna for a second right there. The mistakes of nature. That's a good Terrence McKenna impersonation, actually. Damn. Slipped right into that one. I digress again. Yeah, magnetic fields are everything. The Earth has a magnetic field. Here's one of the ways you know it's not a globe. You hold your compass. Your compass is on a 2D plane, and it doesn't dip or point up depending on where you are on the ball. It only points level and true. I wonder if you got close enough to Mount Meru, if the compass needle would start to point up towards the mountain or down towards the mountain. My guess would be down, but not necessarily. I kind of think that cellular structure of like the magnetic field of the toroid, you know, you make a coil, wrap coil around a steel core, let's say, and you have an iron core, like what do they call those things? Magnetic gates? What do they do? There's these steel loops they used to use to set states of on or off for binary code. They used magnetic cores, that's what they called them. A long time ago, magnetic cores. And they could, you know, wind windings one way on one side of the steel loop. Just a little steel ring, or ferrite or some sort. And then they could wind them the other direction on the other side. And then they could pulse using the permanent motion magnet holder effect. They could induce a state of a magnetic flux going one way or a flux going the other way, and then interpret that as a 1 or a 0, or an off or an on, right? And that's what they used before they had switchable, you know, EPROMs or whatever in computers that we use nowadays. Yeah, they use magnetic cores. So the whole, anyway, the Earth's not a ball in space. Cannot be a ball in space. Makes no sense. Not supported by evidence either. Say the least. The torus shape, though, the magnetic bowl, if you will, is like if you have one ring of steel and your field's going like this around, you know, around it and again. That's one toroid, a toroid field, torus field. If you have two of those close together, stacked, the interaction of the magnetic field would be such that they formed a center line between the two rings. They would be positive, negative, or however you want to refer to them. It's positive, negative. And each one would loop to the center, where they would probably spiral back out and around. Positive going to negative, negative going to positive, but only after it went through the center. So you'd have energy coming up from the bottom one to the center line, and you'd have energy coming out and around down from the top one towards the center line. And where they met at the outside would be like two donuts touching each other, you know? Take two donuts. And there would be a flat, level line in the middle. And that line would be where all the energy concentrated as it focused itself down into its center point in order to go back out. I'm talking magnetic flux. Magnetic flux is moving like an hourglass. It looked like an hourglass, kind of. Picture the shape of an hourglass, and then around the hourglass itself would be the magnetic fields, parabola, whatever, of that. Would be the way energy flowed. You would end up with a flat level center line, and the energy coming in from the outside meeting right there. Must make ice. You get a nice ring around the outside. I'm just, I don't know about that part, but I do know that the shape that I'm talking about is correct. I'm just mentally hypothesizing about energy structures. Ultimately, that's what everything is made out of. You know, and the idea that all things are electric. Electricity implies magnetism, or vice versa, whichever way you want to look at it. You could say all things are magnetic, just as easily as all things are electric. That might be more correct, because the body electric and the electric universe and all that is really a well accepted and promoted idea. But that might be the problem with it. Probably is magnetic. All is magnetic. Magdalene. And the Elohim, the electricity. I see it like in metaphorical sense of the spirituality of the world. To me, it's the elves, the elites, or the Elohims, the Elvises, the elves, the archons, whatever. They're malevolent, and they like sadness, sickness, death, and suffering. It's funny to them. It's their comedy. And so does that automatically make their magnetic opposite good as well? I mean, it seems like it should. Everything is polarized in the world, the universe, in the infinite expanding vacuum space ball. How does that happen too? How do you have a big bang, and then out of that big bang becomes an expanding universe of matter containing a vacuum? So at what point do you just at what point from the Big Bang, moving outward, does the imaginative, fantastical physics stop taking place and the physics that we're familiar with start taking place? I wonder. At what point does the vacuum begin? At what point is there an even? Because it was infinitely hot and infinitely dense, so it was infinitely pressurized. And exploded into a big bang, and that blew out and then created time and space and everything, right? And then what? At some point that pressure just backed off, and then the pressure just went, and it became a vacuum. But the outside expanding event horizon of the vacuum bubble just keeps on moving anyway, even though there's no more pressure. Oh, there's a vacuum behind me relative to my expansion, my rate of expansion. Well, who cares about that? I'm an expanding universe and I've got to expand. Who cares if there's nothing to drive the expansion? Ho ho! Mysterious dark matter. I gotta make a video on AI. I was trying to get AI to lie to me the other day about something in a, not necessarily direct lie, but I know is a lie, right? So I was talking to it about gravity and about the Earth's rotation and the water at the North Pole is the axis of rotation, centrifugal force, and versus centripetal force, as is what will come up when I look into it. Centripetal. And centripetal looks like some bullshit to me, to tell you the truth. I mean, I've heard of it for a long time. It's been another term that I've heard of, but didn't necessarily look into. Centrifugal force I didn't really look into either, but I kind of experience it on a regular basis, so I think I have a pretty good estimation of what it is and how it functions, at least in terms of material world, right, that you can see and experience. So anyway, centripetal force. Yeah, no, I don't think so. The story with the Earth, my question is, okay, water on a ball, okay, sure, let's give it gravity, we'll just give it a pass and say, okay, it's real. And it holds everything evenly on the surface. Then you spin the thing and you create centrifugal force, and that's even admitted to by the space agencies. Yeah, there's a bulge in the middle from the rotation, but it's only, this force is so weak and comparative, and yeah, shut the fuck up already with that. That's what I would say to the scientist who tried to explain that. And somebody tried to respond to a comment I made about that with a page and a half of calculations, I guess you'd say, equations and references to, very specific, subtle points of geometry and algebra. And like, excuse me, dude, what we're trying to do here is graph the force direction vector of two forces. One pulls this way and one pulls down. What's the force direction vector? We don't even need to know what the strengths of those are yet, because we haven't got there yet. You know a force is going this way. You know a force is going this way, right? What's the vector between the two forces? It's not rocket science. It's the 45 between them. If one pulls sideways, like centrifugal force, one pulls down towards the ground, like gravity, then if you're at the North Pole next to the axis, one force is pulling you down, and one force is barely pulling you sideways. Which is true, barely. Barely, because you're at the center. If you're right on the center, it's not pulling you at all. If you move off of center a little bit, though, it begins to pull. The farther you move from center, the greater the pull becomes at a 90-degree angle relative to gravity. And that, you can't get around that with fantastical math or bullshit. The guy's like, oh, well, you know, the gravity and centrifugal force are described in mathematical terms, or not words. They're like, yeah, but words show that you understand the nature of the force you're talking about in the first place. You can apply numbers to a mystical, magical bullshit force you made up all day long. It doesn't make it real. It makes it well planned out and numbered. Okay, that proves it's real, right? No, it doesn't. It don't. It never will. It never did. But it gets people to become baffled by math, the mathematicians. It baffles the people who don't want to think about it that deeply. Like, I don't know, which is where most people are. Probably less than 1% of people. I don't know how to do the complex algebraic math and shit that they're talking about. I'm not saying I do. I do know understand the fundamental nature of the forces, though, and we all experience these every day, unless we don't move at all. If you've never been in a car or been on a ride at the amusement park or been on a merry-go-round or a swing or any of those things, then maybe you wouldn't know. If you're a baby, you might not know. Probably don't know anything when you're a baby. What's going on here? I remember being a baby the other day from being carried around by people, my mom and dad. I was thinking of people that carry you just like hoping that they don't drop you. And they're like, oh crap, I'm moving. Oh, okay, I'm just going to assume I'm safe. I'm not going to fall. Most of the time that was true. Man, this is still hot. So yeah, we're not on a spinning. Can't be because physics says it can't happen. And I think they put that pretty clearly. That was my first outside of things that I heard Eric Dubé say in his videos and then some other people as I looked more into the subject. That was one of the first things that came to me is like, I wonder, because I'd thought of that before about the centrifugal force. When I was a teenager, probably. I don't specifically remember when, but I know it wasn't. I kicked that idea around before in my head, but not to any great degree. And now that I did, I'm like, wait a minute, that is true. And I'm wondering, where am I going to find some other people that believe in the non-moving level Earth theory that have realized that specific proof? There's lots of them. There's lots of proofs. They go on and on and on and on. It's ridiculous. Once you really accept that could be a truth, and then you look into it deeply with an open mind, you just like, the world is not what I thought it was in any way, shape, or form, and it begins to unravel from there. But if you're not afraid of that, then you don't got to worry. The world is still the same. It doesn't matter if you think that it's different than you thought it was. I mean, that's how you learn to become, more aware. You look into things and acknowledge the validity of something, as opposed to the non-validity of something that you've been told. And then you learn from that, and you figure out that your authority figures are full of shizbot. Full of shizbot. Nano. So, we're full of nano. They're full of shizbot. We're full of nano. I gotta make that into a joke. Not that it would be funny, but it's funny. Shizbot. Nano. The end of the AC/DC song from Mark and Mindy and stuff. Old Old here. Hi, my name's Old. People, let me tell you about my best friend. Anyway, that old. Not Bonanza or, Death Valley days old. That's a little before my time. Land of the Lost, though. Electro Woman and Dinah Girl. And Sigmund the Sea Monster. Marty Croft. Hour. And one more. What'd they have? Land of the Lost. Electro Woman, Dinah Girl. Sigmund the Sea Monster. Dr. Shrinker. Dr. Shrinker. Dr. Shrinker. He's a madman with an evil mind. He is a madman. But he's got a good heart. I mean, he wants to end world suffering and starvation by shrinking the people down to this tiny little size, and then there'll be more than enough food for everybody, everywhere. Because they won't hardly eat anything. It makes perfect sense if you think about it. But he'd be the only one of full size left, and well, that would be kind of like maniacally wanting to rule the world, like turn yourself into God. There are some ethical problems with that. But it's a good idea still. I mean, it's not something we should take off the table. Dr. Shrinker was onto something there. Perhaps. And it may be the only way of hiding from the slee stacks should they decide to come up from the depths of the earth, out of the cave networks. I mean, I think that might be a real thing. The lizard lore, the lizard connection with the occult and the dragons and such. So, reptiles feed rather infrequently. If you have an iguana or something, you would know. I don't know exactly what am I thinking? Not an iguana, but a snake, like a snake or some other reptiles. What was it? A Gila monster. Gila monster. They get pretty big, and I guess a full-grown one only eats every month or two. Like, it'll eat something, it'll eat an animal whole, and then digest it slowly for like a long time. So, what if these lizard people that eat humans are like other reptiles in that they eat very infrequently? They don't need to eat often. They just eat once and they're good for a long time, like more than months, like years. What if they can eat once every 20, 30 years or something, or 10 years or whatever, but at a rate that would be unnoticeable to the population. At least a population that was large. If you took the population of our countries in the world, as we supposedly think it is, and you reduced it down really small like in the past, there could be a problem with them coming to feed, because there would be a limited supply of food when they came up to eat from their tunnel systems, right? They come up into the city like, let's see what we caught in the cities this time, like it's a big net. And they come up out the tunnels after they, close off the exits and feast. And and that's us. We're dinner. They feast on us. And then when they're done, they take a crap. No, they don't take a crap because they digest slowly. They feast. They're good to go for another 10 years. You got to digest that. It takes a little time. They live a long time, so their time scale is just way different than ours. Like, if you lived 1,000 or more years, just imagine how off your time scale would be if you tried to relate with beings that only lived 75, 80 years tops, maybe 100 the most. You'd scarcely be able to notice them at some point because their lives would go by so quickly. You'd remember them, but like you'd remember your pets that you've had that have died, dogs or cats, birds, fish, rabbits, pets. If you live thousands and they live less than 100, you'd see 10 of their lifetimes come and go before you were old enough to die, if you died. Maybe they just shed their skin and they get larger. they molt. They come up in molten heat. It's starting to cool off. I still can't get in there, but my legs are burning. I don't know. I'm just rambling on now. I'm trying to keep it from just being me sitting here on the edge of a tub and talking about chemtrails and Morgellons, which is a real thing. I was thinking the other day that if I had to describe what Morgellons essentially is, and this is my theory, it is the sensitivity to electrical fields some people have, in addition to the nanoparticles that are building up like mad inside our bodies from breathing them. As I was saying earlier, breathe it. It fills you. It fills you. Your magnetic fields become all out of whack, and also you become subject to superimposed electrical fields like the cellular networks and the Wi-Fi networks and the phones and such. I mean, that's not rocket science to come to that conclusion that, hey, if I breathe a bunch of metal particles specifically made to be the same size until they fill my entire body, and then I went and walked through an area with high microwave electricity, would that be harmful? Hello, McFly. Duh. Of course that would be harmful. I'm like, do I think I'm some super genius smarter than everyone else because I thought of that? Fuck no. Just fucking common sense. People are that fucking retarded nowadays. They cannot put together a simple cause and effect thing like that. You know, go put some aluminum in your microwave. Put a tiny little piece of aluminum foil on top of your, hot pocket, and then microwave it, and what you'll see is that aluminum will go and burn up. It will turn into smoke, a little puff of plasma smoke, because it burns it. Microwaves interact with aluminum. So, rewind. Take away the microwave and instead put a big cell tower right there. And then take away the hot pocket and one little piece of aluminum and put your body with millions and billions of pieces of aluminum through every inch of it in every cell. And then walk in front of the microwave. It's that simple. Kind of like the, the centrifugal force versus gravity thing too, is that simple. There's the glow people, they're trying to fudge that line between where you're not experiencing centrifugal force at the direct center of rotation and the fact that the force starts out very weak because the distance from that point is so small, and they're trying to act like, oh, it's that weak all the way. They gloss over that no, centrifugal force increases with the radius from the axis. I know there's a big divergence right there from where I was at. Anyway, it all ties together somehow. It's all a big toroid loop, right? Shit, 40 minutes I've been rambling. 41 minutes. Alright. Do I got anything else to say? I'd probably get in this thing now. I don't need to go on and on anymore. I probably said what I need to say. I won't be able to talk once I get in here. I'll be lucky if I can crawl out in 3 hours. Really, it saps you. But doing this, I have the test. Oh man, I should go get it right now and do it because I was thinking about it. Damn. Alright, I'm just gonna go grab it right now. There'll be one more short video associated with this one and all that good stuff. Yeah, I figured.